Hello, Graham here, back with another video. It's early June, so that means it's time to look at the MLB standings. Normally, I would do this on June the 1st, but it's been a busy few days for me. So we're doing it on today, June the 3rd. So before we get into it, just a couple quick notes. First thing, as a writer for Jay's Journal, obviously I'm pretty familiar with the American League East standings and the competitiveness and the strong. Every team is doing well so far in that division has been one of the storylines of the first couple of months of the season, and I'm also pretty sure that the Central in both the American and National Leagues are both pretty weak so far. But other than that, I'm really not sure what to expect here, and I've done my best to try to shield my eyes whenever they've shown the standing. So with that being said, let's get right into it. So, of course, we're going to start with the best division, the American League East. And there you see the Rays right at the top, 40-18. Wow, what an amazing start to their season that they've had. You know, it really makes me think of the New York Yankees start that they got off to last season. They were just an absolute juggernaut, and it seemed like they were a runaway train all the way to a World Series championship. Obviously, that's not the way things turned out. So, although the Rays look really good right now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be home free all the way to Titletown. So obviously you look the next team, you see you got Baltimore right there with them, only 3.5 games back. You know, if they were in just about any other division, I believe, obviously I don't know yet, but I think they'd be in that top spot. They've been a really exciting team, a fun team too, with the bird bath and the home run chain. They kind of remind me a lot of the way the Blue Jays were last year. The Jays are a little bit more stripped down as far as the fun is concerned, and as far as the winning percentage is concerned as well. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Next up, you've got the Yankees. They're 34-25, still kind of in the mix, 6.5 games behind, and just 3 behind Baltimore. They're starting to pick it up a bit, and if you think about some of the major injuries that they've gone through, really a pretty impressive first 59 games there for the Bronx Bombers. I wouldn't be surprised to see them go on a really good run and get right back in this divisional race, but we'll see about that. And then you got the Blue Jays, 31-27. They've been kind of up and down, not the greatest month of May. They had a losing record in May, 4 games above 500. They obviously made a lot of changes in the off season, but you look at that run differential plus 28. That's pretty good for a team that's only 4 games above 500. So they're looking for a bit more consistency, and I think one of the main keys is Alek Manoah trying to turn his season around. He's had a rough year so far, so we'll see if he's able to do that. And then you've got the Boston Red Sox. They've got to be the best 5th place team in baseball, 29-27. They have a really good lineup. Masataka Yoshida has been really impressed since coming over from Japan. For me, it's their pitching. I just don't think they have the pitching, and they're asking a lot of some veteran pitchers that have a long history of injuries. When you think about Chris Sale, James Paxton, and Corey Kluber. So we'll see how that holds up, but I think most Red Sox fans would be like, that's not too bad of a start, considering most people did have them pegged for a last place finish. They're still above 500. They're playing pretty decent baseball out there, down there in Beantown. Okay, now is where it gets a bit more murky as we move on to the next division. We're going to go to the American League Central, and there we have the Minnesota Twins. You see, they've got the same record as the Blue Jays. They're 31-27, yet they're in first place in the American League Central. It just speaks to the lack of good teams in that division, really. They're not bad. They were kind of going like this last year. They were in first place for the first several months of the season, then things kind of fell apart for them. Wheels fell off in the last couple months of the season. They ended up with a losing record, and I believe they finished 3rd in that division. So we'll see. They definitely have some talented pieces on that team. If you think about Carlos Correa, Byron Buxton, the pitching's been pretty good, led by Sonny Gray, and they got Pablo Lopez as well, which was a really intriguing trade with the Marlins this offseason. So we'll see if we could keep it together, but this looks like a 90 win or less division winning team to me. Detroit Tigers are the second team right now. I saw them really early on in the season. Manager AJ Hinch, he had some harsh words for Javier Baez after he made a series of base running and fielding mistakes in an early game against the Blue Jays. It was in the Blue Jays home opening series. Baez was ejected, and since then they were 2-9 at the time. So if you think about that, they've gone 24-20 in their 44 games since then. So I think it was a really good tactic by Hinch to say, I don't care who you are, you can't play like that. And they've been a decent ball club since then, right around that 500 mark. I think Cleveland's been a real disappointment. I think they had a really surprisingly good season last year, and then they added Josh Bell and Mike Zunino, a couple of real power hitters, to a team that kind of specializes in defense and starting pitching. But the pitching hasn't been as good as they were expecting, and obviously the offense has continued to slump. So they still need to kind of figure things out there. Obviously the White Sox have been a big disappointment. Some people had them leading that division before the season started. They're obviously far away from that. 11 games below 500. And then Kansas City, I really thought they would be a little better this year. They're coming off a season when they lost almost 100 games, and they look like they're on pace to do to maybe actually increase their loss total from last year, 17-40. Just a dreadful season so far out there in Kansas City. Vinny Pasquantino, the Italian Nightmare, is one of the guys I kind of look to as a building block for that Royals team, but just got to be disappointing for those fans out there in Kansas City. Okay, moving on to the West, we've got the Texas Rangers. Wow, 36-20. You can make a case that they've actually been the second best team in the American League. Just really strong starting pitching. Obviously, they invested in Jacob deGrom. They already had a couple of strong pitchers, including Martin Perez. And, Marcus Semien is playing like the player they thought they were getting last year when they, obviously gave him that huge contract. He's been an MVP candidate, obviously early days, but Texas has invested heavily in their team, and right now it's looking like they're starting to see some of the fruits of those investments. And then you got Houston. They've really started to come along. They're 34-23, just 2.5 behind now. Seattle, I would say, has been a disappointment at 29-28. They're a team that's been kind of knocking on the door. They traded for Teoscar Hernandez. They made a couple other moves, really trying to get into that upper tier of the American League. Obviously, they've got some work to do. And then you got the Angels, virtually the same winning percentage there. Just one, they've just played one more game, actually, or a couple more games, 30-29. They're both 7.5 games behind Texas. Angels usually do okay for the first month or two, and then they kind of drift away as June rolls on. I'm expecting nothing different this year, but we'll see. They did make some kind of under the radar free agent moves, but I just don't think this team is good enough to really challenge in a really competitive American League. And then you've got the hapless Oakland A's, 12-47. They're not going to be in Oakland for much longer, and thank God. What a disaster that is. They might lose over 120 games. Just a pathetic effort they've put out on the field, and I feel really bad for the fans that have shown up, because that's a really good baseball city, and it's turned into a disaster. And I'm looking forward to baseball coming to Las Vegas, but it's going to be ugly until it gets there, that is for sure. Okay, we're going to have to move ahead with this, going to the National League. Have to make sure not to look ahead. You've got the Atlanta Braves there ahead once again, 33-24. As teams won that division in the last several years, and they have a really strong team. You think about Matt Olson, Austin Riley. They have a really strong catching duo of Sean Murphy. They've also got Travis d'Arnaud there. So and Ronald Acuna Jr. is a guy who could steal, over 60 bases, maybe even 80 or 100 bases this year. You mix that with some of the power that he's displayed, just a really impressive ball player. I think this is the year Miami finally figures it out. They're 30-28, so good for them. They're finally starting to show some winning ways after really building the last several years. Mets have been a disappointment with how much money they've invested in their team the last couple of years, and I'd say the same thing about the Phillies. Just 25-32. Washington has actually been a pleasant surprise. I know they're below 500, but they've been far below 500 the last couple of years. So I really think they're starting to build towards something. And some of the players that they've traded for, some of those big trades that they've involved with, they're starting to see those guys produce, guys like CJ Abrams and some of the pitchers that they've gotten as well. So starting to move that in the right direction there in the nation's capital. Now, on to the Central. You got Milwaukee leading it, very similar to the American League Central, with a not a very impressive record for a division leader, 30-27. You got Pittsburgh kind of right at their heels, just a half game behind. And, Cincinnati and Chicago, very similar records there, 26-31 and 25-31, respectively. They're kind of in the mix. And even St. Louis, they had a horrible start. And 25-33, they're only 5.5 games behind. They're the most talented team, I believe, in this division. So to see them creep up in towards the top as we get into July and August wouldn't be that surprising of a development for me. Okay, we're going to finally move on to the National League West. And there you got it. You got the Arizona Diamondbacks right at the top. Now, I got to be honest, this is not a surprise for me. I thought this team was really knocking on the door. Zach Gallen is one of the most underrated pitchers out there. And I think they did really well in that trade with the Toronto Blue Jays, getting Lourdes Gurriel Jr. and, a blossoming young catcher in Gabriel Moreno. So 35-23, an excellent start for them. Tied for the best record in that division with the Dodgers, who are continuing to play great baseball with a bit of a different cast of characters. JD Martinez has come to the West Coast and he's been really productive for that team. But they've also got some young players like James Outman and Vargas who have really contributed to, like I said, another consistent season there out west for the Dodgers. You got the San Francisco Giants. I really thought they would be a little bit more competitive this season. They obviously fell off quite a bit last year, but you go back to 2 years ago, they won well over 100 games. And they did make a series of solid, if understated, free agent moves in the offseason, bringing in guys like Sean Manaea, Michael Conforto, Ross Stripling, Mitch Haniger, and others. So I think they're going to be looking to get back into that mix. They're 6.5 back of the division lead, but they can at least get into the wild card mix, you would think, with Gabe Kapler manning the ship of a very talented team there. Now, San Diego, you'd have to think this is a very disappointing start for them, 26-31. If you think about the talent that they brought in over the last few years with Xander Bogaerts, you've already got Manny Machado in the fold, obviously Fernando Tatis Jr., and then some of the other guys and then the pitchers that they have on that team. For them to be, below 500 has to be disappointing for them. But they do have a positive run differential and they could get hot and find themselves back in the mix this season for sure. Then we finally ended off with the Colorado Rockies. I really thought that they had something building last year. They signed Chris Bryant. He couldn't stay healthy. He's having a hard time staying healthy this year. They might have a breakout star in Elias Diaz behind the plate, and they always hit pretty well. But CJ Cron isn't hitting the way he was before, and obviously pitching is always an issue. So they find themselves in last place right now, 25-34. Really not that bad of a record for a last place team, but this is a really tough division for them, and they're always going to be a little bit behind the 8 ball with that. In that really hitter-friendly park in the thin air that they play in Coors Field. Okay, this has been really fun once again. Not too surprising. I knew a lot of the way the teams were doing, but it's always fun to look at the standings for the first time and to do it live with you. So thanks so much for watching. Please consider subscribing, and we'll see you next time. All right, thanks.